The consultative evaluation is basically to give the judge more information about your case. And you may have a consultative evaluation early before the case even goes to a judge, where DDS says, hey, we need more information on this, so we're going to send you to see a doctor. Now, the big thing about a consultative evaluation is you do not want to ever miss it. You don't want to just gaff it off and say, well, I'm okay, I don't need to go, or my doctor says blah, blah, blah. Don't do that, because that is going to make it look like you're trying to hide evidence.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for giving me your time today.
Yeah.
Just by way of quick introduction, my name is Peter Evans, the managing partner of Evans Disability, and you're Dan Hyatt, former Social Security law judge for 20 plus years, and now retired as a Social Security judge, and thankfully and gratefully working with our firm, representing clients in front of the Social Security Administration.
Yep.
And for those of you who want to learn more about Dan, I'll put his link to his biography and kind of the behind the scenes of what it's like to be a Social Security judge in the Social Security Administration in the description below. So today I wanted to pick your brain, because I love picking your brain. Today I wanted to pick your brain about sort of the approach to doctors and the different, maybe how Social Security uses doctors within the administration. And before we jumped onto this Zoom call, you and I kind of talked about there's kind of 4 categories that we can take the different doctors involved in the Social Security process and put them in. And the first category we talked about is, a medical doctor at a consultative exam. The second category we talked about was the DDS doctor that reviews or gives their opinion on cases. The third category would be a medical expert at the hearing.
Yes.
And then the fourth category would be a client's treatment provider. So I wanted to pick your brain, and why don't we start with a CE? What is a CE? What are the different types of CEs, and maybe who orders the CEs?
Okay. All right. So generally, most of the judges have a fairly good grasp of general medical ideas, but there are areas, cardiology is a good example, neurology. There are areas of highly specialized medicine that a judge wouldn't necessarily know much about. And even after 20 years, if I had a case involving heart issues, I would generally ask for a consultative evaluation for somebody to go to a cardiologist and have the testing done and see exactly what their functional limits might be. The thing about consultative evaluations is that the state pays for them, so they're kind of stingy with what they'll pay for. So let's say you've got let's say the judge wants a psychological evaluation. So you're going to go and see a doctor that is arranged for you by the agency. You're going to go see this doctor, and if the judge asks for it, there may be some testing involved. And so you need to kind of be aware of that. If you're going to a consultative evaluation, there is going to be some testing generally, but since the state's paying for it, they don't like to pay any more than they have to, for an evaluation. For instance, they won't do an MRI. If you got an orthopedic issue and you go on a consultative evaluation, the judge may ask for an MRI because that's really kind of the gold standard for orthopedic issues. But they won't pay for an MRI, so you're not going to get that. You might be able to get it with your own doctor or with your own insurance or something, but a consultative evaluation is basically to give the judge more information about your case. And you may have a consultative evaluation early before the case even goes to a judge where DDS says, hey, we need more information on this, so we're going to send you to see a doctor. Now, the big thing about a consultative evaluation is you do not want to ever miss it. You don't want to just gaff it off and say, well, I'm okay, I don't need to go, or my doctor says blah, blah, blah. Don't do that, because that is going to make it look like you're trying to hide evidence. Let's say you've got a psychological, let's say you claim you've got post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, they send you to a psychologist, and he's going to examine you for post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you don't really have it, or you might have like a personality disorder or another psychological impairment, and somehow you're like, I don't want to go see this guy. Here's a good example, Peter, and that is victims of sex abuse in the past. People don't want to talk about it to somebody else. And so they will not, generally, it's very difficult to get someone to go to a consultative evaluation where that's in their history. They don't want anybody else to know about it, and they sure don't want it in their records. So it's important that if you get scheduled for a consultative evaluation, you go. And if you don't, it's not going to look good. It's going to look like you're afraid that the doctor's going to find out that whatever. I don't know. But
yeah. Let's take a step back and let me ask you, what are the different types of CEs that either a judge or Social Security can order? Because you mentioned, we're talking about like there's psych evals and full psychological evaluation, and they go through a series of testing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a cardiologist, so a lot of times maybe ejection fractions or EKG type testing.
Sure.
You mentioned a neurologist.
Yeah. These are areas of medicine that a judge wouldn't necessarily have, or even DDS. They have their own experts, but maybe they want, like on a psychological evaluation. Let's say that there's a claimant who has some sort of a learning disorder. Well, they might send you to a psychological evaluation to have an IQ test done and see, how functionally limited you are by testing. But it's generally, you're probably not going to get a consultative evaluation for, I'm just trying to think, something really common like headaches. That's a pretty common impairment for people that's kind of in addition, but it's there isn't any real science about headaches, except neurologists have, certainly have a understanding of organic causes of headaches, but sure, a lot of people have them, and it's not something a doctor can examine for.
What about, so you're sort of saying, like, from a physical standpoint, we're going to send you out for objective testing as best as we can.
Yeah.
And have you ever, as a judge, requested a CE for like x-rays of someone's spine or back, or no?
Frequently. Yeah. Well, okay, I can't say frequently. I used to ask for MRIs, and I got tired of being turned down. So then I would maybe ask them to do x-rays and then do a physical evaluation and give me the estimate of how long they can, generally the functional areas they look at, like how long can you stand, how far can you walk, how much can you lift, what's your range of motion in your arms and your shoulders, do you have lower extremity problems? Those things can all be kind of fleshed out by an orthopod, but they can also generally be fleshed out by just a general practitioner, for that matter. X-ray is simple, but it's not. X-rays are not all that telling, because frequently you'll see in medical records that an X-ray shows almost no problem in a lumbar spine, but lo and behold, get a CT scan or an MRI, and it turns out there's severe problems that the X-ray didn't pick up on.
Was the state paying for CT scans?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they get reimbursed by Social Security or not, but yeah.
The other types of, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, the other types of CEs that I would see a judge send out for, or a DDS send out for, would be a nerve conduction study.
Yeah, for like carpal tunnel or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other types of CEs.
I just thought of something else in that same vein, Pete, that I want to bring up, and that is that CEs can be requested by DDS, by the state, or they can be requested by a judge. And while the state has their own evaluators, all they're looking at is the bare record, the page, the records that the client has or that are in the file. And so that would be a good reason for the state to ask for a consultative evaluation. And if they don't, and you have an issue, for instance, a psychological issue or a cardiac issue, you can always ask the judge and just say, hey, the state kind of garbage in, garbage out. The state turned this guy down, but they didn't have enough information. So can we send him out for an evaluation? Because I think he's got, a nerve conduction problem or something organic that would provide good evidence for his case. So if you don't get an evaluation at the state level on your initial or reconsideration levels, you can always ask a judge to do it.
Right. Let me ask you this. Now that you are, let's talk about the doctors. The doctors that actually do the CEs, whether it's a neurologist, psychologist, psychiatrist, or a cardiologist, or just an MD who's doing the kind of a general physical eval, those are not the clients or the claimants' treating physician, nor should they be treated like a treating physician, correct?
Well, that is true, but there is a proviso there, and that is that I think that the regulations indicate a preference for a consultative evaluation with the treating doctor. If the doctor knows you as a patient, a consultative evaluation might last 4 or 5 hours, and so this doctor's looking at you for 4 or 5 hours and decides, well, he's not that bad off or whatever. Whereas your treating doctor has a longitudinal record of how bad you are and how bad you have been and where you're going as far as your limitations and so forth. And I do recall that there was, I don't recall the regulation, but I do recall that there was always a preference to send you to your own doctor. But I've rarely seen that done, even when I was a judge. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember even one case where a client was sent to their own doctor for a consultative exam. It almost feels like to me there's kind of this list of doctors.
There are. Yeah.
That say, hey, we'll do CEs. We work with Social Security, and I'm a cardiologist. Just send them to me. Versus the time to be like, hey, go to this claimant's cardiologist. It's just easy to checklist. It's
pretty rare to send a claimant to their own doctor. It's very rare. I don't exactly know why that is. I think like you said, the agency has a panel of doctors that they will send people to. And it's not uncommon for, let's say, a rheumatologist. Let's say you've got some sort of rheumatological impairment, and the judge wants to get a handle on it, like, let's say, lupus or, what's that?
Fibromyalgia?
Yeah, fibro. That's a good one. And let's say the judge wants to get a handle on how functionally limited you are. And so the best place to go for, those kind of impairments is a rheumatologist. But there aren't many rheumatologists on the list. So it wouldn't be uncommon for the judge to say, I want this person to go to a rheumatologist and find out what their ANA is and, what the chemistry says. But there aren't many, so you might end up going to a general practitioner, some other, maybe an orthopod, some other discipline, because there wasn't a rheumatologist available.
Right. I think it's important to note for the folks that are watching this too, is that when you go to your CE or your consultative exam, just your relationship with that doctor, you don't enjoy doctor-patient privilege.
Correct.
That nothing in there is confidential. You're signing documentation that allows the doctor to share all their findings with Social Security or with the judge and whoever you're going to share it with. I think the other important aspect of that too is, we talked about in the CDI investigation, you gave an example of, being consistent, and sometimes in CEs that a red flag can be created there,
they watch the doctors. It's not uncommon for an examining doctor, a consultative evaluator, to know when you're coming and to actually look out the window and watch you walk across the parking lot.
Sure.
And I don't know why. Maybe they're inherently suspicious or something, but I mean, who stands at the window and watches people walk by? But it's not uncommon.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to read that. I think, and that brings me to the next question about the consultative exam. And it's a common question we get from our clients is, what are some tips that you would give to our clients about how to best prepare for a CE?
Mm-hmm.
It's and you did mention some CEs can take up to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of that, I've seen CEs take 15 minutes. So, and you and I can both have probably a pretty lengthy discussion about what can a doctor learn in 15 minutes evaluation. But what are tips that you would give to claimants on preparing for their consultative exam?
The first thing, show up.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's pretty important.
Don't miss it.
No, don't miss it. Now, the second thing might be aware that doctor, unless it's ordered by the judge, that doctor is not going to have a lot of medical records to look at. The state will send, some of the records, but probably very little. So if you've got recent MRI evidence or recent cardiology or recent psychological treatment or whatever, take those records with you and provide them to the doctor, the consultative evaluator, because he's gonna give his opinion based on what information he has. And if he has very little information, he's probably not going to give you a very supportive opinion unless it's something organic that one can really obviously see, like a leg impairment or something. But the other thing would be consistency, and that is if you use a cane or you use a walker, generally, go ahead and use it at the evaluation. But if you don't use a cane and then you're like walking into the doctor's office with a cane and you're all, ambulating, all tilted to one side or something, I don't know. Not a lot. I would say it wasn't infrequent for me to see if a case was in front of me where a person was exaggerating a leg problem, and they would use a cane when they go to the consultative evaluation, but they used it in the wrong hand. Generally, a cane is properly used on the opposite side of the impaired leg. And so that's a real tip-off. So if you don't use a cane normally, don't lay it on too thick, because it's going to bite you later. Yeah.
I think about the the old TV shows where the plaintiff would show up with a neck brace in the court.
Oh yeah. Same.
Peel it off in the parking lot. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think that's a great tip. And when you're talking about bringing the results of your MRI or your CT scan, or if it's a psychological evaluation and you've had one recently, bringing the results of maybe that psych eval.
Yeah.
You're not saying bring your whole medical file, are you?
No. Just recent treatment records, and especially if they're disclosing evidence of a real serious problem,
Yeah, and what we, as you and I both know, we tell clients, bring that objective evidence. Don't just bring like your recent treatment notes, visit summaries. Objective evidence means like objective testing, like the MRI.
Testing results. Yeah,
exactly. And I think because, if you bring your own medical file, then the examiner may not look at it because he just doesn't have time.
Yeah.
The other tip that I give clients is from the minute you park to the minute you get into your car to leave, everything is being observed. As you know, some of these 15, especially these 15, 20-minute evals, because they'll be right. I just watched the guy for 15 minutes. They're observing, are you showing pain from even sitting to standing?
Yeah.
Standing to sitting.
Yeah.
Walking.
Yeah.
And it's such a fine balance because like you say, on some levels, if you lay it on too thick, it's going to draw a red flag. If you do it like too easily, it's you're gonna be, this guy can walk a mile, no problem, based off of how he ambulated across the room or how he walked across the room. And, there's this medical doctor that's giving their opinion.
Yeah.
And I think and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about sending the claimant out to their own doctor. And you can, you've done way more hearings than I have. But what I see is that a lot of times where judges are asking for CEs is if there's kind of this, at least somewhere in the record, maybe, and I like to use depression as an example. Somewhere in the record, the claimant has been talking about depression pretty consistently to their medical provider.
Yeah.
But the medical provider never refers to a counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist that's in there. Then a good judge will say, look, there's an allegation of depression along the way. I think we should send him out for a psych eval.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they haven't had treatment for depression yet, so they're going to get the psych eval done to kind of see where the claimant's at. And, because they're not your treatment provider in the traditional sense, it's all over the board in my mind about what the results of that can be. And in the physical exams about sitting, standing, walking, and lifting, many times, once that evaluation is in, that's the only piece of evidence that the judge has to rely on that gives some sort of answer to those questions.
Sure.
And if it doesn't go the claimant's way and their own treatment provider isn't providing, a sit, stand, walk, lift or their own psych eval or anything, what does a judge have to do in that situation?
That's a really good question, Peter, and that does bring to mind one of the hats that the judge wears. As a judge, you want to be fair, of course, but you don't want to miss anything, because if you do, that's kind of doing a disservice to the claimant. And let's say the depression thing, it's in the records, and the judge didn't even consider it because there wasn't any evidence other than just anecdotally in the records. It's a judge's obligation to make sure the record is fully developed. That's his job. That's not the representative's job. That's the judge's job. And as a representative, you're not remiss in pointing out to the judge, look, there's this other issue. I think we need to look into it. You raised it. If the judge doesn't look into it, it could be enough error to get a new hearing.
Yeah.
So that's important, and to realize that is a duty of the judge, is to really thoroughly consider all impairments. And depression is a really good one because that is a mental impairment. And a good way to win a case is if you have both a physical impairment and a mental impairment. Those two together can synergistically make you disabled or unable to work or, whatever.
Yeah, no, the other tip advice or a piece of advice that I give clients is, if it's going to be a psychological exam, those are kind of the ones that go a little bit longer than just, I'm showing up to a medical doctor for a physical RFC. You may, like you said, be there for 2 to 4 hours, right? Bring water, bring a snack. Don't make sure you're dressed comfortably.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's some obvious tips we give to clients, like tell the truth,
Don't exaggerate, but don't downplay it either. Yeah.
Right. Hit it square on the head. Don't underplay it. Don't exaggerate. Just hit the nail on the head. Because one of the things they test for on those evaluations, especially the psych evals, specifically is, are you a malingerer or are you?
Yeah.
There's a question of this person is telling the truth, and if that hits the CE, I mean, my experience is judges bring that up like, hey, it looks like you didn't give a full effort here on the eval, or you were exaggerating on the eval.
Yeah, that's a kiss of death.
Right.
It really is. If you're if you're exaggerating, and it's a psych eval, and they have a TOMM, which is the test of memory malingering, or an MMPI, the LFK scale, which measure how truthful you're being, and it comes out not to your favor, that's going to kill your case as far as mental impairments go.
Right. So tell the truth. Let's just recap here so for people to know. So when showing up for a CE, don't miss it.
Right.
Show up on time.
Yep.
Right. If you have objective evidence to support what the CE is, obviously you don't want to bring an MRI to a psych eval. But if you've had a recent psych eval, and what would you define as recent? Something in the last 12 to 24 months?
Oh, yeah. I'd say with the last 12 months. Yeah. I wouldn't go back 24 because, all you're required to do is prove disability for 12 months or more.
Yeah. I tell folks if 12 to 24, if it's at the 14-month mark, I'm not splitting hairs, just take it.
Yeah. Sure.
So 12 to 24 months, if you've had an evaluation like an MRI, CT scan, even an X-ray, might not show much, or a psych eval, or like depending on the test, bring objective evidence to the test, just your whole medical file. If it's going to be a long exam like a psych eval or something, bring a snack. If you use a cane, bring a cane. Now, I have a question about a cane because I have a judge who blows me up every once in a while about, is this cane prescribed? Because if it's not prescribed, then I don't count it.
Yeah.
So anyone I talk to who uses a cane now, I tell them, go get a prescription from it for your doctor.
Yes.
Walmart.
Yeah.
So would we bring a prescription for the cane to prove that to the CE or no?
No, I would just hold on to it and you can submit that as evidence, the representative can. And especially if there's a question by the judge, you can say, well, Your Honor, we've got this prescription right here. If you'll take it, yeah.
And then what else did we say? So we talked about bringing a snack if need be consistent. Make sure you know that everyone's watching you, or the doctor potentially could be watching you from the second you get out of the car.
Yeah.
The second you get back into the car and leave. And then, and then hit the nail on the head. Don't over exaggerate and don't under exaggerate, because we've seen both,
Yeah. Is under exaggerate, is that a word?
I don't know. I just, I'm coming up with terms as we go. So yeah, don't downplay.
Okay. All right.
Don't downplay your symptoms, and don't overplay your hand either.
Right. There you go.
And you don't enjoy doctor-patient privilege with that.
Correct. Whatever you say, or the observations that you provide to that doctor are fair game.
Right.
No, it's going to be in your record.
And for the CE itself, that can happen at the application level, reconsideration level, and or the hearing level.
Correct. Yeah.
And your lawyer can request a CE be done in advance at any point in time.
Yes.
We can submit that in writing, say, hey, we want a CE for this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Trying to think, anything else about CEs we want to give advice on, or
I don't think so, Peter. I'll keep it in the back of my mind here while we're talking about the other stuff.
Okay. So let's talk about kind of a little bit different than the CEs. Who is this? Sometimes you'll get, especially denials. If you're denied